Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to our explainer. Today we're going to explore 8 common situations that, honestly, pretty much all teenagers face at some point. We're going to go through these slowly and clearly, looking at the actual problems and, more importantly, figuring out the solutions together. Here is what we're covering today. First, an introduction to teen problems. Second, navigating money and parents. Third, managing friendships and fashion. Fourth, handling skin and peer pressure. Fifth, overcoming loneliness and stress. And finally, number 6, making your own choices. This structure is really going to help us think about these problems and make practical choices.
Section 1. Introduction to Teen Problems. Let's look at 8 common situations.
So, have you ever had a problem and just didn't know what to do? Take a second to really think about that. Everyone faces difficult situations sometimes, and we all have to figure out what to do. As we look at these 8 common situations today, I want you to actively ask yourself this exact question for every single one. What would you do in this situation?
Section 2, Navigating Money and Parents, Situations 1 and 2. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can look at home life.
Right, before we jump into our first problem, let's look at a really helpful vocabulary word. Part-time. This simply means working only for a part of the day or a part of the week, rather than all the time. Keep that word in mind. Okay, here's our first everyday problem. When you need money. So, what would you do in this situation? Well, you could ask your parents or a family member for a little help. You might also get a part-time job if you're old enough. But remember this absolutely crucial rule. You must be careful with your money. Don't just spend it on things you don't need. Listen to those words again. Could, might, and must. They're going to give us all our options today.
Let's learn another word, strict. Strict means demanding that rules are followed very carefully. Take a second to think about what it actually feels like when someone is super strict with you before we look at this next scenario.
Situation 2. When your parents are too strict. Again, ask yourself, what would you do in this situation? Over on the left, we see arguing and not listening. Honestly, that never really helps. But on the right, there's a much better choice. You could talk to your parents calmly. You might explain exactly how you feel and ask for a bit more freedom. However, for this to actually work, you must listen to their reasons too. Communication goes both ways, right?
Section 3. Managing friendships and fashion. Situations 3 and 4. Let's move to and see how this builds as we start looking at social situations. Here is a very useful phrase for when you're dealing with friends. Fall out. To fall out literally means to have an argument and stop being friendly with someone. And hey, it happens to almost everyone at some point.
Which brings us to situation 3, when you fall out with your friends. So, what would you do in this situation? Think about your choices here. You could talk to your friend about the problem. You might say sorry, especially if you know you did something wrong. And importantly, you must try to listen and understand each other to actually fix the friendship.
Situation 4, when people laugh at what you wear. This one can be really tough, but look at your options. First, you could simply ignore them and just continue wearing exactly what you like. Second, you might talk to someone you trust if the laughing keeps happening. And third, you absolutely must remember that everyone has their own unique style. Be confident in yours.
Section 4. Handling skin and peer pressure. Situations 5 and 6.
Let's build up our vocabulary a bit more with this word, dermatologist. A dermatologist is a special doctor who treats skin problems. If you're having real trouble with your skin, this is the expert you need to see.
Situation 5. When you have spots on your face. We've all been there. What would you do in this situation? First off, you could talk to a doctor or a dermatologist. You might use specific products that are good for your skin type, but most importantly, you must take care of your skin and avoid touching your spots too much.
And now for situation 6. This one is about peer pressure. When your friends pressure you to do something you really do not want to do. Let's ask our core question again. What would you do in this situation? Listen, this one is absolutely critical. You could say clearly and firmly, no, I don't want to. You might even just leave the situation entirely if your friends aren't respecting your decision. And you absolutely must make your own choices here. True friends will always respect your boundaries.
Section 5. Overcoming loneliness and stress. Situations 7 and 8.
Situation 7. When it is difficult to make friends. So, the crucial point is realizing that you have active choices here. Step 1, you could join a club or a new activity. Step 2, by doing this, you might organically meet people who have similar interests to you. And step 3,
You must be patient and keep trying. Good friendships just take a little time to build.
And here is situation 8, our final common problem. When you feel stressed out. Ask yourself one more time, what would you do in this situation? To manage all that stress, you could make a study plan to organize your time a bit better. You might take a short break, do some exercise, or just chat with a friend. And above all else, you must give yourself time to rest. Your mind and body literally need a break to stay healthy.
Section 6. Making your own choices. Conclusion. Let's zoom out a bit now and look at how we make these choices in general.
I want you to remember this simple but really powerful truth. There can be many different solutions to the exact same problem. So whenever you're facing a difficult situation, just take a breath. Don't panic. Think calmly about your choices, because you're never stuck with just one option.
These specific words we practiced today, they actually help us think better. What could you do? What might happen? What do you have to do? What must you do? Using these exact words helps us slow down and think carefully before we jump into action.
So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Take this question and actively apply it in your own daily life. The very next time you face a challenge, stop and ask yourself, what would you do in this situation? Think carefully, choose wisely, and trust yourself. You've got this. Thanks so much for joining me today.